Please turn with me to the book of Luke, the account that Luke gives us of the life of the Lord Jesus.
Paul, at the end of Colossians 4, seems to clearly indicate that Luke, the beloved physician, was not of the circumcision, rather a Gentile, the only Gentile author in the New Testament.
He was closely associated with Paul, travelling much with him, and in particular visiting Jerusalem and spending time with Paul in Jerusalem at the time of Paul's fourth missionary journey. And it is there that he had the opportunity of meeting up with the people who were involved in this story and putting it together in a way that is particularly appropriate for Gentiles, and he brings out in the story things that are relevant for the Gentile believers. The four Gospels present four different portraits of the Lord Jesus. They don't conflict, but they emphasize different aspects. Matthew emphasizes Jesus as the King of the Jews, and it begins with his genealogy as king, descended from Abraham and David, whereas Mark presents him as a servant. There is no genealogy. He went about doing many great works. Luke presents him as the Son of Man, and so goes back to the creation and shows the genealogy of Jesus back to Adam, and shows the humanity side of the Lord Jesus, while John's Gospel presents him as the Son of God. It doesn't go back just to creation, but goes back to the beginning, before creation, when God was light, and the Lord Jesus was light, and brought forth, created all things that exist. We're beginning to look at Luke's account of the Lord Jesus. We'll read the introduction he gives to us in Luke chapter 1. Inasmuch as many have taken in hand to set in order a narrative of those things which are most surely believed among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word delivered them to us, it seems good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write to you an orderly account, most excellent Theophilus, that you may know the certainty of those things in which you were instructed. May the Lord bless these words to us. Now there's some interesting things that take place here. First of all, Luke is telling us that his account is based on eyewitness records. The things that are written in this account were witnessed, and Luke has interviewed the eyewitnesses, the people who were there, who saw these things, and has integrated the story to give us a complete story. There's no fabrication, he's saying, and there's not just the recollections of a few people and others say, well, I'm not sure whether that happened or not. These are the things that were most surely believed. They were widely understood, and Luke took the time and effort to go back to the people who he had confidence in because they were members of the church and they were respected people, and yet they were able to testify that, yes, I was there when these things happened.
Key sources include Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Paul's contacts with Barnabas' family. Paul had a close working relationship with Barnabas. Barnabas received him into the church in Jerusalem, and Barnabas had links to the upper room and to the various Marys who were involved in the story. And so Luke was able to speak to all of those people who witnessed these events.
Why has he done it? Well, it's addressed to most excellent Theophilus. We don't know of a person named Theophilus.
Theophilus was evidently an important person, possibly in Antioch, that Luke had great respect for. But via his name,
Theo is God, Philus is lover of.
It's also written to you and me who love God and seek to know him.
The lover of God, though, is the one to whom this account is written, that the lover of God may be sure about the things that they were instructed. Had we not had the written accounts, then there would always be a wondering whether the things that we were believing as Christians were true. Well, what we have in the Bible is records that go back to authentic sources from the whole of the Bible, whether it's the account of creation, or whether it's the story of Moses, or the story of David, or the kings, or the story of Jesus. These things were written by reliable sources close to the events and have been brought down to us by faithful transmission of these things. That's why they were written, that they might be transmitted safely to us. The other thing is that Luke says that he has had an excellent understanding from the very first. So this points to the fact that Luke himself was an early believer in the Lord Jesus. We are first introduced to him in Paul's second missionary journey, where he joins the missionary party, apparently in Troas, and stays behind in Philippi or Thessalonica. But we know from the fuss that Paul had with Mark that he wouldn't put into his party someone who he had any doubts about. And so it is evident that Luke was brought into Paul's missionary party because of the strong credentials he had at that very early stage of the ministry of the church. So Luke was an early believer in the Lord Jesus, who had been instructed from the very beginning and has been instrumental in teaching and preaching, has had contact with the people who participated, who were involved in the story, and now is writing it down, an authentic account for us to follow and believe. And so these are the things most surely believed among us. Now, it's common these days for liberal people to say, well, we don't really have to believe that Jesus walked on the water, and we don't really have to believe that he caught hundreds of fish, or that he raised the dead. These were just stories made up to enhance the reputation of Jesus. Well, Luke refutes that. He says, people saw these things happen, and I've interviewed these people, and these things definitely did happen.
Most were witnessed by many ordinary folk.
They are widely known and understood to be true and accurate record of the events. Luke's accuracy, of course, can be tested because not only did he write the Gospel, but he also wrote the book of Acts. That contains many details of the Roman world which are able to be checked
against Roman records.
And the conclusion that they regularly come to is that in the detail of the account that Luke gives is a great accuracy as to the nature and characteristic of the Roman world in which he lived. In other words, it is plainly obvious that Luke knew what he was talking about. He wasn't just writing a pious tale. Now, the other thing that Luke seeks to do here is to set things in order, set in order a narrative of those things. And so he has organised this in a systematic way. These are the things that are believed, but they are things that we are to be sure about, to provide a foundation and basis for our faith. So this is Luke's introduction to his Gospel. When did he write it? Well, he had the opportunity to interview Mary and Philip and some of these key players, in particular when he was with Paul in Jerusalem between the third and fourth missionary journey. And so it is likely that he wrote these things while Paul was in prison in Caesarea, and then when Paul went to Rome, he finished the book of Acts, because that ends at the end of Paul's time in Rome. As Paul looked to the future and saw the need for authentic records, and when we read 2 Timothy, we see that Paul had a focus there of putting together the New Testament for us, then we will understand the importance that not only Luke gave to these things, but Paul himself gave to them.
The opening verses of Acts make it plain that Acts was a sequel to the Gospel of Luke. That means that these things were written about AD 60 or before. That is, within 30 years of the resurrection.